She was a kind-hearted young woman who dreamed of making the world a better place.
She wanted to make a difference.
To love people, to help people.
And she fell in love with a man who shared her passion for helping others.
She was totally infatuated.
Things started to move fairly quickly.
But when she disappeared, her loved ones demanded answers.
There was no evidence.
Something was telling me that things are not right.
Had someone from her past returned seeking retribution.
It wasn't just a crush. He was obsessed with her.
He cries every time he sees her with someone else.
He flew off the handle with rage and violence.
She was caught in the middle.
Or was the truth even more sinister?
There's really a lot of shit going on that hasn't been brought to light.
I said, tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from me?
I can't do this anymore, Mom.
Something like this changes you.
It was a bloodbath. The room lit up like a disco club made for a black light.
No!
April 13, 2018. It's Friday night in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a charming Midwestern suburb located just outside of Milwaukee.
Waukesha is a very quiet area compared to Milwaukee. There's less crime. It's a great community to raise your family in.
It has some of that small town feel with some of the bigger city amenities. As a police department, we're very well supported by our community.
But tonight, Waukesha police are gearing up for a busier night than usual.
Friday the 13th is always hectic for law enforcement. You have kids pulling pranks, vandalism.
But just before midnight, the police receive a report about something far more serious.
That night, I just started my shift. And Anshu and VJ came into the police department to report their daughter, Shannon, missing.
Anshu and VJ Manny tell Officer Fletcher that the last time they saw Shannon was early that morning before they headed to work.
That was around 6 o'clock. Shannon was still in bed.
Shannon's mother explained she tried to call her daughter later that morning around 11:30 a.m., but got no response.
I called to check up on her just to see if she had got up and had breakfast, and she's not answering her phone.
Give me a call, okay?
I go, okay, maybe she's in the bathroom or something. She'll see my missed call and she'll call.
But Anshu says she never heard from Shannon. And a few hours later, her daughter's absence started to set off alarm bells.
She usually picks up her little brother from school, but not today.
3 o'clock happens, 3:15 happens, my son is waiting. Shannon's not there, so he's calling Shannon, and she's not answering, and he's calling me.
Anshu immediately rushed home from work to check on her daughter.
Her work bag was all ready for work. She had her work clothes out, and she's not here. Her car is not here. I called her again. She's not answering.
Shannon was supposed to be to work at 4, so they checked there next.
Hi, this is Shannon's mom. Did she come to work today?
I called her workplace, and I was told that Shannon never showed up to work. I called my husband. I said, you know what? Get off work right now.
Something is not right. This isn't like her.
Shannon's parents tell Officer Fletcher they spent the rest of the evening contacting Shannon's friends.
Everyone said the same thing. They hadn't talked to her and didn't know where she was.
For no one to have heard from her, that was very strange.
I'm driving around trying to find Shannon's car, and I don't see her car. I said, okay, my only option is to go to the police station.
Now it's been nearly 18 hours since Shannon was last seen.
Her parents were visibly upset. You could feel that they were concerned.
There's intense fear that something bad has happened.
Originally from the island of Fiji, 21-year-old Shannon Manny and her family immigrated to the United States when she was just a toddler.
When we moved, I was so emotional, especially coming from Fiji to this big country. But she had that charm. We met people through Shannon because if we go shopping, she would wave, say hi to people, and start conversation.
Shannon was incredibly smart, very beautiful.
People that she would meet for even 5 minutes would fall in love with her. Right away, she connected as if she knew them from a very long time.
She's something. She's our princess.
Growing up in a culture different than her own taught Shannon to always be considerate of others.
She always says, Dad, when you help others, make you happy.
If she would hear anybody having a difficult time, she would just encourage them, remind them that, bad days will come and go. Live what you have today. Just count your blessings.
And Shannon's gentle spirit extended beyond her family and friends.
She wouldn't allow me to kill any bug inside the house. She would say, no, Mom, don't kill. Let's put this bug outside. Let it be free.
But her sensitive side could also make it difficult for her to cope with change.
When she graduated from high school, her family relocated from Washington to Wisconsin, leaving all of her friends behind.
She had a very hard time. She cried. The entire flight, she cried. And I was a little worried, but she was the very first person who adjusted well. Her charm, her people, personality just drew people to her.
After graduating high school in 2015, Shannon enrolled in the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee.
As she's merging into young adulthood, she's trying to figure out long-term goals.
She was taking courses to be a social worker to help with fighting against violence.
She loved people, to help people.
Despite her busy school schedule, Shannon also held down a job at an organic food manufacturing company, working alongside her father.
I've been at that company for 22 years. She was, working with me at work the part-time, helping me each and every step.
It was at work one day in the spring of 2017 that Shannon would meet someone who shared her outgoing demeanor. 26-year-old Quinton Neal.
Hey, I heard you guys were hiring. Can I have an application?
Yeah, sure. 1 second.
When Shannon was working, Quinton happened to come apply for a job.
All finished?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
And I was wondering, what time you get out of here tonight?
He managed to get Shannon's phone number.
She was attracted to him.
There's an instant connection.
Quinton Neal wasn't just a good-looking man. He also brought the excitement that Shannon's life was lacking.
Quinton and Shannon seemed to be quite a bit different. Quinton was an individual who was into fast cars, and Shannon was focused on school.
He lived a very exciting lifestyle. He partied, and that was exciting for her.
Quinton was a little older than Shannon.
He embraced the fact that he was young, and, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Just like Shannon, Quinton seemed to have a passion for helping others.
She said, if I ever win a lottery, I will make a shelter home for women and children. And he said, I also have a dream that I also want to build a shelter home for my community. When he found out what Shannon's personality was, what her desires and goals were for life, he started telling her that, oh, Shannon, yeah, you are blessed with a good family. I come from a broken family.
I think that's what drew them closer together. He was somebody that not only was she attracted to, but that she, felt she was a positive person.
And after a year together, they decided to adopt a shelter dog named Akimo.
And that was a big step forward in their relationship.
The dog had many health issues, but she said, I want Akimo to know that he was loved. He had a family.
That's just who Shannon was. But it was also her and Quinton's first step toward starting a family together.
She said, Mom, I am happy. I'm so blessed.
But now, Shannon has vanished without a trace.
Her mom expressed to the cops that there's no way that she just disappeared.
It's obviously something that's very out of character.
After dealing with parents in situations like this, you can tell when there's a certain level of fear there might be something wrong, and we need to start looking into this.
When Shannon's parents sit down with detectives, they tell them that Shannon's age could pose a problem.
Oftentimes, if a person is over 18 and they're considered an adult, we're not necessarily required to take them as a missing person.
So being 21 and disappearing, officers had to consider all possibilities.
Initially, the police questioned whether or not this could potentially be a runaway.
But Shannon's parents insist there's something that makes their daughter's sudden disappearance especially disturbing.
Shannon is going to have a baby.
She is 4 months pregnant.
So this instantly became really urgent.
By the spring of 2018, 21-year-old college student Shannon Manny believed she had met the man of her dreams.
Quinton seemed to be this Prince Charming.
Meeting Shannon was a big positive in his life.
The young couple shared big plans for their future.
It was a dream for them to open a shelter for women and children in need.
Shannon was taking courses to become a social worker.
But now, Shannon has mysteriously disappeared from her parents' home in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And they tell investigators there's something that makes the situation even more dire.
Shannon recently discovered that she was pregnant.
That's a big red flag for law enforcement. Pregnant women generally don't disappear unless something is very wrong.
According to Shannon's parents, the father of the child is 27-year-old Quinton Neal.
When her mom called Quinton, he reported that he had not spoken to her. He hadn't seen her at all that day.
But investigators want to speak with him themselves.
So detectives reach out to Shannon's boyfriend, Quinton.
Quinton said he was at his house and he can head over soon.
He seemed genuinely worried at the time.
While police wait for Quinton to arrive at the station, they probe Shannon's parents for more information.
Shannon had just moved to Wisconsin a couple of years earlier. She had a new relationship, a new job.
She was pregnant and she did recently start college. So maybe she disappeared due to the stress.
The fact that Shannon's car is also missing seems to support that theory.
Is there anywhere she would have gone?
No. No.
She only goes to school, to work, and to see her friends.
The latest she was out, and that was during work, was at 10:30. And now, her being pregnant, she would take good care of herself.
Her clothes, valuables, and cash, everything was still at home.
Shannon wouldn't leave like this.
Something must have happened to her.
They had that parental instinct. They knew that something was wrong.
Just then, Quinton Neal arrives at the station.
Quinton came into the police department while Shannon's parents were also at the police department.
He said, "Oh, Mrs. Manny, I'm really worried about her."
But Quinton confirms he has no idea where Shannon is.
Where would she be? Best I can guess right now is because that's where she went to school.
He also says he hasn't seen Shannon in more than 24 hours.
The last time they met up was Thursday afternoon at his house.
She was there for a while and then left to go to school to pick up her little brother.
Quinton said everything was normal. Shannon was her typical bubbly self.
She seemed the same when he texted her the next day.
Quinton showed police the text messages.
She said she had to get ready to go pick up her little brother from school and get ready to go to work afterwards.
Like Shannon's parents, Quinton expresses fear that something bad may have happened to her.
He did seem distraught.
You know, my child is out there, who knows what's going on, and I'm just helpless.
Where does she hang out? Where does she go? If she's
My house, work.
if she's not at work?
And there's no other option.
They weren't getting anywhere. Quinton didn't have any leads to give them.
But just as they're about to end the interview, Quinton mentions something that makes the investigators perk up.
They asked if there were any people that he could think of who may want to harm Shannon. And Quinton reported that Trevor, an old friend from college, recently confessed his love for her.
He disrespected our relationship.
Quinton says that it wasn't just a crush. He was obsessed with her to a disturbing degree.
He expressed to her how he loves her so much and he cries every time he sees her with someone else.
And according to Quinton, Trevor's declaration wasn't well received.
Shannon rejected him.
That's a clear motive.
In the hours following Shannon Manny's disappearance, her loved ones are becoming more and more concerned that something terrible has happened to her.
Something's simply not right here. The parents don't know what happened.
But now Shannon's boyfriend, Quinton Neal, has provided investigators with a possible lead.
He mentioned a classmate of Shannon's named Trevor Banks who had made romantic advances, and Shannon had shot him down.
He may have been upset, and that may have been a reason for him to be involved.
Shannon's parents were shocked to hear this. They had never heard about Trevor before.
According to Quinton, Trevor's infatuation with Shannon went beyond a schoolyard crush.
Quinton also reported that Trevor seemed to be pretty obsessed with Shannon.
Honestly, he was someone that Shannon and I had discussed that she stopped talking to.
Quinton was concerned, but he tried to stay out of it because he trusted Shannon to handle the situation.
A week earlier, she had.
Shannon was upset because she felt like Trevor was trying to break up her relationship.
She was like, I don't want to just sit here and talk to somebody who openly tells me, I love you and stuff like that, knowing that I'm in a relationship.
Shannon had talked to Trevor and told him to lay off.
Police then thought, we need to get Trevor in so we can talk to him.
But before they reach out to Trevor, Waukesha investigators file an official missing persons report for Shannon.
Police take a description of her car and issue a BOLO.
To investigators' surprise, they get a hit that morning.
Waukesha investigators received a phone call from Milwaukee's police.
Homicide.
They found Shannon's car in a parking lot in the outskirts of Milwaukee.
Milwaukee is about 20 miles away from Shannon's home in Waukesha.
Detectives head to the location and conduct a search of the vehicle.
They don't find anything suspicious inside or outside of it.
There were no signs of Shannon's cell phone, keys, or wallet in her vehicle. No signs of blood or any struggles.
But even without finding a crime scene, the police are more concerned than ever.
There's no way that Shannon would leave this car here in this lot and just walk. It doesn't make sense. She's pregnant. So at this point, we have to assume that there's a stronger possibility of foul play happening.
Investigators decide to dust the vehicle for fingerprints.
They found 3 fingerprints inside of the car: Shannon's, Quinton's, and a third unknown one.
Investigators expected to find Shannon and Quinton prints in the car, but the third set of prints was a mystery.
Could the mystery prints belong to Trevor Banks? That afternoon, detectives bring him in for an interview at the Waukesha Police Department.
He told detectives he was really concerned about Shannon's disappearance.
I've been so worried about her since I found out she was missing. I've been trying to call her all day.
But when the investigators ask about his relationship with Shannon, Trevor insists they were just friends.
Trevor came from a less privileged background. He could only afford to attend UWM on a baseball scholarship, and he said he had always felt a little out of place, except with Shannon.
She welcomed him into her circle of friends with open arms.
Detectives don't think they're getting the full story from Trevor.
Since Quinton told the officers something entirely different, they pushed him.
Was there ever anything more serious between you and Shannon?
No, it wasn't nothing like that.
Initially, he denied any romantic feelings.
But then Trevor's story starts to change.
Trevor can tell that the tone of the conversation is shifting, that maybe detectives are accusing him of something.
Trevor eventually admits that he did tell Shannon that he did love her.
I didn't get the answer I wanted, but it doesn't mean I'd do anything to hurt her.
Trevor reported that Shannon declining his profession of love didn't make him angry, but he was excited that they were still able to remain friends.
Just to have her in your life was a gift, and that's how Trevor saw it.
That's when detectives revealed the crime lab's recent finding.
The third fingerprint belonged to Trevor.
We found your fingerprints in her car.
So what?
Trevor isn't fazed by this revelation.
He said, "Of course, my fingerprints are in the car. She always transported me to school."
He finally comes out and says, look, I had enough. There's no way I could have done this.
I wasn't even in Waukesha on Friday.
Trevor reported being at a baseball game 100 miles away.
The police are quickly able to confirm the alibi with his coach.
While Trevor may have had feelings for Shannon, there was no evidence connecting him to this missing person.
With their prime suspect eliminated, the investigators are back at square one until they receive an unexpected visit from Shannon's parents.
In Shannon's room, I found her Apple Watch.
Shannon's mom was able to unlock it and was able to see some of her text messages.
She hands over the watch for detectives to examine.
As they scroll through the dozens of recent messages from concerned family and friends, something catches their attention.
Quinton initially told police he hadn't seen Shannon the day of her disappearance.
But the messages on Shannon's watch reveal otherwise.
Messages between Quinton and Shannon were last noted at 11:57 on the day that she disappeared.
They were supposed to meet.
Man, I'm just so sick of this.
Quinton had lied.
So now he becomes suspect number one.
What?
During his interview with the Waukesha Police Department, Quinton Neal said he hadn't seen his missing girlfriend, Shannon Manny, for more than 24 hours before she disappeared.
He told the detectives that they texted that morning, but that was it.
However, thanks to Shannon's parents, detectives now have evidence that suggests Quinton has been lying.
When the officers had gone through Shannon's Apple iWatch, they observed text messages between Shannon and Quinton.
According to the text messages, Shannon had actually been planning to meet Quinton on the day she went missing.
Quinton had asked Shannon if she was still on her way. She responded with saying, yes, if I wasn't going to come, I would let you know. And Quinton responded with something to the effect of, okay, I'll leave the door open.
Why hadn't Quinton told police about that? Unless he had something to hide.
And as detectives continue poring over the couple's text messages, they uncover even more disturbing information.
They find a conversation between Quinton and Shannon just 2 weeks prior to her disappearance.
On March 30th, Shannon and Quinton had a conversation about some intimate partner violence in the relationship.
The texts describe a vicious attack Quinton perpetrated against his girlfriend.
Shannon said, "Quinton, this is something I never expected from you. You grabbed my hands, got in my face, and started screaming. I couldn't push you away."
They see Quinton apologizing in a text, which is basically an admission of guilt.
Quinton replied, "Please don't leave me, I need you."
Quinton stated he would never hit her again.
And Shannon replied, "We just need a break."
It makes Quinton more suspicious because it casts strong suspicion that he is a violent man, and particularly when it came to disagreements that he got into with Shannon.
According to Shannon's mother, she and her husband have had reservations about Quinton for a while now.
Now that it's clear there was foul play involved in Shannon's disappearance, her parents were becoming more and more convinced that Quinton was behind it.
We have not been trusting of this relationship here lately.
He had a lengthy, violent criminal history.
Quinton was on parole for armed robbery with the use of force. He was arrested for battery, disorderly conduct, and armed robbery.
But Quinton's violent past wasn't the only thing about him that concerned Shannon's parents.
He's been emotionally unstable when it comes to this baby.
Shannon's parents met with Quinton when they initially found out she was pregnant. They had a conversation with him where he reported he wanted to keep the baby and would marry Shannon.
I just want you to know that I'm gonna take really good care of both of them.
First, he tells me that he wants a family, he wants to spend his life with Shannon, really cares about her.
But Shannon's mother explains that a couple days later, Quinton changed his tune.
After a couple days, he sends me really weird messages that he doesn't want to do anything with Shannon, he doesn't want the baby, and I should tell Shannon to abort the baby.
He completely flipped the story.
That wasn't the only example of Quinton's bizarre behavior.
From the first day she met him, Anshu says there were warning signs.
One day, out of the blue, I get a text message, and it's from him. He says that, "Miss Manny, I found out about you guys. I'm Shannon's friend, and I really adore your daughter, and I'm in love with her, and I know your culture, your background. I really want to meet with you guys." I said, "Okay, let me talk to my family and then set up a time that you can come over and then we can meet you."
But Anshu didn't get back in touch with Quinton quickly enough.
He thought that I was ignoring him, and then another message came from him. The second message was very, very rude. Like, "I'm trying my best to meet with you guys. You think so highly of yourself that you want to ignore me." And like, okay, where is this coming from?
It was like a switch would flip, and he would turn into a totally different person. He can go from calm to furious over absolutely nothing.
I responded back and I said, "Quinton, you know what? I'm sorry, I apologize, it's my fault. I didn't even had a chance to talk to Shannon's dad."
2 days later, Quinton had another unexpected change of heart.
He sends me another message saying how sorry he was, and he never meant to write those words, and he was just frustrated. So I told him, I said, "Okay, we are ready to meet with you," and I scheduled for him to come Thursday evening. I told him by 7, just come in by 7. So 7 o'clock comes, he's not there. 8 o'clock, he's not there. And close to almost 9, he comes in. And I said, "You were late, it's really late." And he goes, "Well, I was busy."
He's been erratic, and you can't trust anything he says.
Shannon's mother did express some concern that there may have been abuse in the relationship.
There were a couple times when I had noticed that Shannon's face was a little swollen, and then bruises on her hands and scratches on her arms.
Still, Shannon had refused to end the relationship.
She said that in due time, everything will work out. From today, everything will be better. She said, "I'm a believer in giving you a second chance."
Eventually, Shannon began to tell her mother what was really going on.
I said, "Tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from me?" Shannon tells me, "Mom, he hit me. He came into my car and he started punching She said, I have made it clear to him that I do not want him in my life any longer.
I can't do this anymore, Mom. I'm done. I'm so done.
But despite her parents' protest, Shannon couldn't stay away from Quinton.
Like a lot of domestic abuse victims, Shannon eventually started seeing Quinton again. But their relationship was on rocky ground, to say the least.
She said, no one becomes a parent overnight, and I don't mind struggling to get there.
Shannon's parents are positive that Quinton did something to harm their daughter.
Everything is a lie.
Shannon's mom wasn't short with her words.
Anshu is adamant that Quinton has something to do with this.
This raised a lot of red flags, led us to believe that Shannon had gone to the residence and something may have happened there that Quinton wasn't telling us about.
Oh, thank you for bringing this information to our attention. We're going to find out what happened to your daughter.
But before the detectives can confront him with what they've learned, Shannon's parents take matters into their own hands.
I told the officers that I am going to search for her again. After we left, my husband and I, we are outside Quinton's home. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. We waited outside his house for any movement or anything, nothing. So 10 o'clock comes, my husband goes, knocks at his door, he never answers. Then it was a little after 10, he goes again, knocks, and Quinton opens the door. He is surprised to see my husband and I, and the way his body demeanor was as if he was shocked, scared, very restless.
Quinton reluctantly agrees to let the Mannies search his home.
My husband just went upstairs, searched his bedroom. He comes down. I'm standing talking to him. In fact, I'm begging him, please, please let us know if you know anything.
Quinton stood by his story. He said he had no idea what Shannon was.
He tells me, okay, Miss Manny, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I'm going to look for Shannon, then later I'm going to go to work. So let me know. I'll keep on messaging you and calling you. Just keep me updated what the cops are saying.
Shannon's parents believe it's all an act.
He's pretending to be this concerned boyfriend who will do anything to find Shannon, but his body language is telling a different story.
He's all shaking, all nervous. The way he was behaving, it was very bizarre.
Afterwards, details of the confrontation don't go over well with police.
So I'm leaving his house, and entire time I'm keeping a close contact with the detectives. So I told the detectives I'm leaving Quinton's house right now. And he goes, where? Where are you leaving from? And I said, we just visited him, his home. And he told me to get out of that house right away.
Based on this new information, it was now becoming an urgent and volatile situation.
With every passing minute, detectives know there's a possibility that Shannon won't be found alive. So they move quickly and secure a search warrant for Quinton's home.
Initially, when they get there, they don't find anything. There's no scents in the air that cause concern, no bleach, nothing of the sort.
It is extremely spotless.
Investigators decide to use a chemical called luminol to test for the presence of blood.
You apply it to an area, and then if there's blood there, you can put a black light over it and the blood will illuminate.
In the upper floor of the house, there's surprisingly no indication of foul play.
It looks clear to me.
But then investigators make their way down into the basement.
CSI applied luminol to the basement.
They turned on the black light, and the whole room lit up like a Christmas tree.
There is blood everywhere.
Police investigating the disappearance of Shannon Manny have just discovered a gruesome scene at the home of her boyfriend, Quinton Neal.
When CSI got to Quinton's house and used the luminol lighting, they were able to discover blood in the basement.
When you hear something like that, obviously your heart sinks.
The discovery confirms everyone's worst fear.
Shannon Manny was already dead.
No one could have survived losing that amount of blood.
This is no longer a missing persons case. Now it's a murder case.
Police take Quinton into custody.
When police arrested him, they took his cell phone.
Before detectives sit down with Quinton, they take a look through the contents of his phone. And what they find bolsters their case against him even more.
His search history showed that he was looking up lye, which is a chemical that could be used to dissolve human flesh.
He also Googled shovels and the water depth of a nearby bridge.
To the police, it's clear what the searches mean.
He was looking for a way to dispose of a body.
That afternoon, detectives sit down with Quinton for the second time.
Look, man, I told y'all. I don't know where she is.
It's time to come clean, Quinton.
They show him the text messages, and they tell him they know about the abuse.
Quinton changes his story several times, and it seems like he's lying more and more.
Man, I ain't never hit Shannon, man.
We found her blood in your basement.
The evidence was pretty much overwhelming.
Eventually, Quinton's demeanor begins to change.
There was no way for him to explain the blood.
It was really just a situation where it's like, okay, Quinton, you know it's over. It's over. We got you.
He finally tells police he's ready to tell them the truth.
So what did happen?
But it's not the story investigators are expecting to hear.
It wasn't supposed to go down like this.
He says that he did do it, but it was self-defense.
Quinton admits that Shannon had come over to his house on the day she disappeared.
Tensions were high that day. He says that her parents were trying to force him out of her life.
They got into a pretty heated argument. Shannon was worried about what kind of father Quinton would be.
Man, I'm just so sick of this. They pretend like that isn't my baby too.
Well, you are not acting like a father.
What?
And at some point, the argument turned violent.
Quinton told detectives that Shannon went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife and a handgun.
He said he kept a gun in case of an emergency.
Oh, what are you doing?
Quinton claims that Shannon pointed the gun at him and pulled the trigger.
But miraculously, it didn't go off.
The safety was on.
Quinton says at that point, he felt like he needed to act fast.
He rushed her to try and take it, and they ended up struggling over the gun.
Give me that.
They got into an argument over the gun, which led him to shooting her in the head, and she fell down the stairs.
According to Quinton, things only got worse from there.
He was shocked by what he'd done, and he went down in the basement to check on Shannon.
Quinton claims that somehow Shannon was still alive and still ready to fight.
He says that she still wouldn't let things go.
He claims that she came at him and he stabbed her.
He said he was forced to do so in order to save his own life.
The absurdity of Quinton's account isn't lost on detectives.
Bottom line, his story didn't make any sense. How could Quinton have walked away unscathed from a fight like this?
Regardless, detectives let him continue.
Quinton said that once he realized Shannon was dead, he panicked.
I was freaking out, man. I didn't know what to do.
Quinton admits that after cleaning up the blood, he stuffed Shannon's body into a nearby suitcase.
What'd you do with the suitcase?
It was basically, now it's time to wrap up the case. We need a body.
To investigators' surprise, Quinton doesn't hold back.
I'll show you.
And his disregard for Shannon's life becomes even more apparent.
It's just tragic. That's the only way you can put it.
It was pretty much egregious and just terrible.
In Waukesha, Wisconsin, Quinton Neal has just confessed to killing his pregnant girlfriend, Shannon Manny. But he claims he acted in self-defense.
These facts just were not making sense. There were no defensive wounds on you, we know this was not self-defense.
Now Quinton has agreed to show detectives the location where he disposed of Shannon's remains.
He leads them to a storage unit.
It's in this unit right here.
That's right here.
Even for seasoned homicide detectives, the discovery is horrific.
Her wrists and ankles are bound with duct tape, and her head was covered with a bag.
When they remove the bag, they find that her eyes are duct taped.
Based on Shannon's injuries, it's even more apparent that Quinton's version of events is a lie.
The fact that, you have two methods of harm that happened to this young lady, stabbing and shooting. No, that points to premeditation. This was not self-defense.
For Shannon's loved ones, the news is earth-shattering.
I was asked to look at some pictures to identify her. All I could see was blood. The detectives told me to concentrate and look at the tattoo, ignore the blood. Her tattoo was on her forearm. It said, "All living things have a right to live."
We miss her every day, every second, every night.
The door will never open. She will never walk in. That's difficult. Somehow we manage to go about living the day. But when evening comes...
Despite their grief, the Mannies are determined to see justice served.
If Quinton thought that my daughter was my weakness, he forgot the biggest part, that she is my strength.
On April 17th, 2018, Quinton is charged with 2 counts of homicide, one for Shannon and one for her unborn son.
He's also charged with 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon.
And with the evidence they've collected, investigators believe they have a rock-solid case against Quinton.
Based on the couple's text messages, it's clear that Shannon went to Quinton's house that day.
They were arguing about the pregnancy.
Quinton, you're not taking this baby seriously.
Is that what your parents said?
This isn't about them. This is about us.
Hey, come here. Where are you going? Come back here.
Get off of me.
No, you're not going nowhere.
He gotten violent with her before, but this time the argument escalated and he went too far.
Hurting me,
not going nowhere.
Let go of my arm. Let go!
The fight spilled into the basement, where things only got worse.
No, don't shoot me.
Quinton didn't kill her instantly. It took multiple gunshots.
Even after shooting her, he proceeded to stab her several times. The brutality of the crime is just unfathomable.
Once Shannon was dead, Quinton immediately tried to hide what he'd done.
If Quinton was acting in self-defense, he should have called the police immediately.
But instead, he bound her body and placed it into a suitcase.
Over the next 3 days, he looked Shannon's parents in the eye and told them lie after lie. What kind of monster would do something like this?
He was trying his best to get away with it, showing no remorse.
This really looked like an airtight case.
But on the eve of his trial, the prosecution suffers a setback.
The attorneys receive an anonymous letter stating that Quinton was not the one to blame for Shannon's murder.
The letter claims that he's taken the fall for someone else.
The letter leads to Quinton's trial being delayed for more than 3 months.
That letter could give Quinton's defense just enough evidence to cast reasonable doubt on the state's case.
Thankfully, though, investigators are able to identify the source of the letter.
It was sent by one of Quinton's friends, basically just trying to get him out of jail.
After the writer of the letter was identified, the judge rules it has no bearing on the case.
But in the end, Quinton's case never makes it to trial.
July 15th, 2019, Quinton cuts a deal with prosecutors.
In order to avoid facing the death penalty, Quinton agrees to plead guilty to both counts of first-degree murder.
Quinton was sentenced to life without parole for the homicide of Shannon and the unborn child.
The judge describes the case as the most brutal he had ever seen.
The room lit up like you were in some kind of disco club made for a blacklight.
While Quinton Neal will spend the rest of his life behind bars, Shannon's loved ones must endure an even more unbearable fate.
Shannon's family can never get their daughter back.
The story never ends, and no time can heal the wound. Who wants to be in that position to bury their child before them?
If something is missing, like it's not a whole family. Our life is not the same. It's not the same happiness.
Even though her life may have been cut short, Shannon's memory will continue to inspire those around her.
I won't let my Shannon's life go in vain. She wanted to make a difference. I will fulfill her dream. And if God's willing, we will build that shelter home in her name. And then my grandsons too.
She always said, we're not gonna leave you guys, Mom and Dad. I'm always gonna be with you guys. And she is. She is.